I never imagined that my sister Diana's secret birthday party, the one she planned for me but didn't actually invite me to, would lead to the most satisfying moment of our complicated relationship. But when I walked into that exclusive rooftop, venue wearing the designer dress she'd always coveted, holding the promotion letter that explained everything, the look of shock on her face was absolutely priceless. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The irony wasn't lost on me as I sat alone in my apartment on the eve of my 30th birthday, scrolling through social media and accidentally discovering an event that shouldn't have been visible to me at all. My sister Diana had always been meticulous about her privacy settings, but a mutual friend's careless tag revealed what was supposed to remain hidden: an elaborate birthday celebration being planned at Skyline Terrace, one of the most exclusive venues in the city, a birthday party for me, without me. My name is Olivia Chen, and at 30, I've learned that sometimes the most painful betrayals come wrapped in familiar packages. For years, Diana had positioned herself as the successful sister, the one who had followed our parents' carefully prescribed path through law school and into a prestigious firm, while I had chosen a riskier route as a digital marketing strategist for startups. Her life looked impressive from the outside: the corner office, the luxury condo downtown, the carefully curated social circle of other young professionals on similar trajectories. What she couldn't have known was that 6 months ago, I had been quietly developing a revolutionary algorithm that transformed how emerging companies engaged with potential customers, an innovation that had recently caught the attention of Vertex Global, one of the largest digital marketing firms in the country. The acquisition deal had been completed with minimal fanfare, exactly as I preferred. While Diana was posting Instagram stories from networking events and charity galas, I was in confidential meetings with Vertex's executive team, negotiating terms that would not only provide substantial financial compensation, but also position me as their new director of innovation strategy, a role that would place me at the same professional level as the senior partners at Diana's law firm. I hadn't shared this news with my family yet, partly because the final contract had just been signed the previous week, but mostly because I had wanted to announce it during what I thought would be a small family dinner for my birthday. The discovery of Diana's elaborate party, one I wasn't invited to, had thrown those plans into disarray and opened old wounds that I thought had begun to heal. Growing up as the younger sister of Diana Chen had meant living in a constant shadow. She was the academic prodigy who brought home perfect report cards, led multiple student organizations, and secured scholarships to prestigious universities. I was different, creative, independent, and unwilling to measure success by the metrics our traditional Chinese-American parents valued most. This had created a painful dynamic where Diana's achievements were celebrated while my choices were questioned, her path praised while mine was viewed with concern and sometimes disappointment. The distance between us had grown in our adult years, with Diana increasingly positioning herself as the family success story while subtly undermining my career choices during family gatherings. "Olivia's still figuring things out," she would explain to relatives, her tone suggesting patient understanding for my supposedly misguided professional path. Not everyone can handle the structure of traditional careers. Some people need more flexibility. The comments were always delivered with a smile that masked the condescension beneath. What Diana had never understood was that my choice to work with startups hadn't been a fallback position, but a deliberate strategy. I was fascinated by the innovative potential of emerging companies and had developed specialized skills in helping them scale through targeted digital strategies. The algorithm I'd created had revolutionized how these companies identified and engaged potential customers, reducing acquisition costs by over 40% while increasing conversion rates significantly. This wasn't figuring things out. It was pioneering a new approach that established industry leaders were now scrambling to adopt. As I stared at the event details on my screen, Diana's surprise for Olivia, 30th birthday celebration, I felt a complex mixture of emotions wash over me. The venue was stunning, the guest list extensive, and the planned activities reflected genuine effort and consideration. So why wasn't I invited to my own birthday party? The answer came in the form of a text message from my cousin Min, who had always straddled the uncomfortable middle ground between Diana and me. "Hey Liv, feeling weird about tomorrow night. Diana says this is her special surprise for you, but she mentioned you'd be getting the real surprise later. Most of us assumed you knew about the party but were playing along with her plan. Now I'm not so sure. Should I ask her directly?" The pieces began falling into place as I recalled Diana's odd behavior over the past few weeks, her unusual interest in my weekend plans, her questions about my friend circle, her suggestion that we have a quiet dinner, just the two of us, on my actual birthday. She wasn't planning to include me in the celebration at all. This was Diana's party, not mine, a showcase of her generosity and importance in my life, carefully orchestrated for our shared social circle to witness. I thought about how this would play out. Diana would host an elaborate celebration in my honor, collecting praise for her sisterly devotion and generosity. She would explain my absence with some convenient story, perhaps that I was recovering from a minor illness, or had an unavoidable work commitment, or was being surprised, with the photos and videos afterward. Then she would arrange a much smaller, less impressive gathering where I would be expected to express overwhelming gratitude for her efforts, never knowing what the actual celebration had entailed. The realization left me breathless with hurt, that quickly transformed into something else entirely: determination. After years of allowing Diana to control the narrative of our relationship, of smiling through her backhanded compliments and condescending support, I suddenly saw an "I'm so glad you're here," she said quietly. When I realized you might not know about this, I felt horrible, but I wasn't sure if I was misunderstanding something. "You weren't," I confirmed, keeping my voice low. "But tonight isn't about creating drama. It's about celebrating with people I care about, including you." "Diana has been talking about this party for weeks," Min confided. "She's been so focused on making everything perfect, getting every detail right. I just don't understand why she wouldn't include you in the planning, or at least let you know it was happening." Before I could respond, we were joined by Michael, my former colleague from StartScale, the digital marketing agency where I had begun developing my customer acquisition algorithm. His presence at the party was unexpected. We had remained friendly after I left the company, but we weren't close enough that I would have expected Diana to include him on the guest list. "Olivia, happy birthday." Michael greeted me with a warm hug. "When your sister contacted me about tonight, I was surprised but delighted to be included. It's been too long since we caught up properly." The mention of Diana reaching out to him piqued my curiosity. "I'm glad you could make it. How did Diana find you? I don't think you two have ever actually met." Michael looked momentarily confused. "She said she was collecting contact information for important people from your professional journey. She was very thorough, asked all sorts of questions about your time at StartScale, what projects you worked on, how your ideas were received. I got the impression she was compiling some kind of career retrospective for tonight." This new information shifted my understanding of Diana's motivations. She hadn't just been planning a party, she had been researching my professional history in detail. But for what purpose? A tribute video? A commemorative book? Or something else entirely? As Michael moved on to greet other guests, I found myself scanning the room with fresh eyes, noting details I had missed in my initial observation. Near the bar was a display I hadn't examined closely, what appeared to be a professional timeline highlighting various stages of my career, complete with photographs and descriptions of my roles and accomplishments. From a distance, it looked impressive and thoughtfully compiled. I made my way toward it, curious to see how Diana had chosen to represent my professional journey. The timeline began with my graduation from university and continued through my various positions at digital marketing agencies and technology startups. The descriptions were accurate but oddly minimized. My leadership roles were described as team participation, my innovative strategies characterized as supporting established approaches, my client successes framed as contributing to agency efforts. The effect was subtle but unmistakable. My career appeared linear and conventional, rather than the entrepreneurial path it had actually been. The final entry noted my current exploration of new opportunities, rather than acknowledging my development of a proprietary algorithm or any hint of my recent acquisition deal with Vertex Global. Standing before this sanitized version of my professional history, I finally understood Diana's purpose. This wasn't just a birthday celebration. It was a carefully constructed narrative about my life. One that positioned me as moderately successful, but clearly secondary to Diana's more prestigious career path. The party wasn't meant for me to attend because it wasn't actually about celebrating me. It was about establishing Diana's generosity toward her less accomplished sister. The realization should have angered me, but instead, I felt a profound sadness. What insecurity drove my sister to invest so much energy in maintaining this fiction? What need was being fulfilled by diminishing my achievements rather than simply celebrating her own? As I contemplated the display, I became aware of Diana approaching with a small group of her colleagues from Hamilton and Reed, the prestigious law firm where she worked. I recognized them from social media photos, the carefully curated circle of young professionals who featured prominently in Diana's online representation of her life. "And here's the woman of the hour," Diana announced as they joined me. "Everyone, my sister Olivia has been admiring the career highlights display I put together. Olivia, these are some of my colleagues who were eager to meet you." The introductions were performed with the practiced smoothness of someone accustomed to networking events, Diana briefly noting each person's title and specialization. The subtext was clear in her tone and phrasing. These were accomplished professionals at a prestigious firm, graciously attending the celebration of someone from a less elevated career path. "We've heard so much about you," said Eliza, a sharply dressed woman whose body language mirrored Diana's poised confidence. "Diana mentioned you work in digital marketing for smaller companies? That must be so interesting. The startup world has such a different energy than corporate law." The question was delivered with polite interest that barely masked its condescension. I could see Diana's satisfied expression. This was exactly the dynamic she had engineered, positioning herself as the successful sister graciously celebrating her sibling who had chosen a less prestigious path. In that moment, I made a decision. The leather portfolio containing my Vertex Global offer letter and position description remained untouched in my clutch. I could easily produce it now, countering Diana's narrative with concrete evidence of my professional achievement. The temptation was strong. To see the shock on her face, to witness her colleagues' reassessment in real time. But that response would only reinforce the competitive dynamic Diana had created. It would acknowledge the premise that our worth was measured by professional status and financial achievement. Instead, I chose a different approach. "I'm passionate about digital innovation and helping emerging companies reach their potential," I responded with genuine enthusiasm rather than defensiveness. The startup ecosystem offers incredible opportunities to develop groundbreaking approaches that established industries often adopt later. My focus has been creating data-driven strategies that transform how companies connect with their ideal customers. My response was confident and articulate without directly challenging Diana's framing. I could see her colleagues' subtle reassessment. They had expected someone less polished, less assured in her professional identity. Diana's expression flickered momentarily, registering that I wasn't playing the role she had assigned me. "Olivia has always been drawn to less conventional career paths," Diana interjected, attempting to reclaim the narrative. "She's very creative. Perfect for the startup world where things aren't as structured as traditional professions." The comment was delivered with a smile that suggested affectionate understanding rather than criticism, but its purpose was clear. to re-establish the hierarchy she had constructed, positioning my choices as interesting but less rigorous than her own. I've found that innovation often requires stepping beyond established structures, I replied evenly. The most valuable solutions rarely emerge from conventional thinking. The conversation continued in this pattern, with Diana subtly positioning my career as the less impressive counterpoint to her own achievements, while I responded with confident descriptions of my work that didn't directly challenge her framing, but refused to accept the diminished role she had assigned me. As the group dispersed, Diana remained beside me, her expression thoughtful as she studied the career timeline she had created. "I wanted to show how far you've come," she said, her tone suggesting genuine belief in her good intentions. "Everyone has been so impressed with the journey I've documented." "It's an interesting perspective on my career," I acknowledged, choosing my words carefully. "Though I notice it doesn't include my development of the customer acquisition algorithm that's been my focus for the past year." Diana waved this observation away with a dismissive gesture. "I wanted to focus on the official positions you've held rather than specific projects. It creates a clearer narrative for people who aren't familiar with digital marketing terminology." Before I could respond, we were interrupted by the event coordinator Diana had hired, informing her that it was time for the scheduled speeches. Diana's expression brightened immediately. This was clearly a moment she had been anticipating. Another opportunity to showcase her generosity and sisterly devotion. "Perfect timing," she said, squeezing my arm in what appeared to be affection but felt more like a warning. "I've arranged for several people to share their thoughts and memories. It's going to be so special." As Diana moved toward the small stage that had been set up at one end of the terrace, I watched her transform into the confident public persona she had carefully cultivated. Shoulders back, smile radiant, movements graceful and assured. This was Diana in her element, the center of attention, orchestrating an event that would reflect well on her while ostensibly honoring someone else. The speeches began with Diana's welcome, a masterfully delivered introduction that portrayed her as the thoughtful sister who had created this magical evening to honor my milestone birthday. Her words were carefully chosen to emphasize her role in making the celebration happen while expressing seemingly genuine affection for me. "When I thought about how to celebrate my sister's 30th birthday," she told the gathered guests, "I knew it had to be something special. Olivia has always marched to her own drummer, taking the road less traveled. While some might have chosen more traditional paths, she has pursued her interests with passion, even when those choices weren't the easiest or most secure options." The subtle framing was unmistakable to me, though likely undetectable to most guests, the implication that my choices had been risky or uncertain compared to her more prudent decisions. Diana was constructing a narrative where her success was the result of discipline and wisdom, while mine represented a more chaotic approach to life and career. "Tonight is about celebrating Olivia exactly as she is," Diana continued, her voice warm with apparent sincerity. "I've gathered people from every chapter of her journey to share memories and good wishes, and I've created this evening to reflect her spirit, creative, unexpected, and full of heart." The irony of Diana claiming to celebrate me exactly as I am, while presenting a carefully edited version of my life story, wasn't lost on me. But as other speakers took the stage, childhood friends, former teachers, extended family members, I found myself genuinely moved by their memories and good wishes. Whatever Diana's motivations in organizing this event, she had brought together people who cared about me and provided them an opportunity to express that care. As the speeches continued, I noticed a subtle pattern emerging. The friends Diana had selected to speak were primarily from earlier periods of my life, childhood, high school, early university years. There were few representatives from my professional life, and none who could speak to my recent achievements. The timeline she was presenting through these speakers ended before my greatest successes began, reinforcing the narrative she had constructed about my career being less notable than her own. The final scheduled speaker was our mother, whose relationship with both Diana and me had always been complicated by her traditional expectations and difficulty understanding choices that deviated from her vision of success. Diana had positioned herself as the daughter who fulfilled those expectations, while I was the one who challenged them, a framing that had shaped our family dynamics for years. I have been blessed with two daughters who have taken very different paths in life, our mother began, her accent more pronounced when speaking publicly. Diana has always made practical choices, working hard and achieving exactly what she set out to do. Olivia has followed her interests, even when they weren't what her father and I would have chosen for her. I felt a familiar ache at these words, the implication that my choices were somehow less valid or successful than Diana's, that I had prioritized personal interest over achievement. It was a perspective that had shadowed me throughout my adult life, reinforced by Diana at every family gathering. But tonight, our mother continued, surprising me with an unexpected shift in tone, I want to acknowledge that there are many ways to measure success. Olivia has pursued work that excites her imagination and challenges her mind. She has refused to be limited by others' expectations. These are qualities I have come to respect, even when I didn't always understand her decisions. The acknowledgement was tentative but genuine, a small step toward recognizing the value in my different path. I glanced at Diana and saw her expression tighten almost imperceptibly. This wasn't the narrative she had anticipated from our mother, whose approval she had always claimed as validation of her own choices. As our mother concluded her remarks, Diana quickly retook the stage, thanking all the speakers and smoothly transitioning to the next phase of the evening, a professionally produced video tribute she had created as the centerpiece of the celebration. Before we move to the dance floor and continue our celebration more informally, Diana announced, I've prepared a special tribute to honor Olivia's journey from childhood to this milestone birthday. Please direct your attention to the screens. The lights dimmed, and projectors illuminated large screens positioned around the terrace. The video began with childhood photographs, set to music that had been meaningful during different periods of my life. The production quality was impressive. Diana had clearly invested significant resources in creating this tribute. As the video progressed through my life story, I noticed the same pattern that had characterized the career timeline display and selected speakers. My professional achievements were minimized, my entrepreneurial endeavors framed as interesting side projects. Rather than serious work, my recent successes entirely absent. The narrative Diana had constructed portrayed me as someone who had chosen an unconventional but ultimately less successful path than her own. The creative, somewhat flighty sister whose 30th birthday warranted celebration not for her achievements, but simply for who she was as a person. It was a subtle undermining wrapped in apparent affection and generosity. The video concluded with a montage of photographs from family gatherings over the years, many featuring Diana and me together in moments that appeared harmonious and loving. The final image showed us as children, arms around each other, smiling, with the unguarded joy of youth, before competition and comparison had complicated our relationship. As the lights came up, I found myself the center of attention, guests watching for my reaction to this elaborate tribute. Diana approached, her expression expectant, clearly anticipating gratitude and emotion in response to her creation. "What did you think?" she asked, her voice carrying just enough volume to be heard by those nearby. "I wanted to capture the essence of your journey, who you've been and who you're becoming." The moment crystallized everything about our relationship. Diana's need to control the narrative, to position herself as the successful sister generously celebrating the less accomplished one, to receive praise and recognition for her apparent generosity while subtly reinforcing the hierarchy she had constructed. I could have responded with anger or with evidence that challenged her portrayal. I could have produced the Vertex Global offer letter and publicly corrected the record about my career. I could have created the kind of scene that would have satisfied, immediate feelings but damaged our relationship potentially beyond repair. Instead, I smiled genuinely and embraced her. "Thank you for bringing together so many important people to celebrate with me," I said, my voice sincere despite the complexity of my feelings. "That's a gift I truly appreciate." Diana returned the embrace, visibly relieved that I appeared to be accepting her version of events, that I wasn't challenging the narrative she had so carefully constructed. As we separated, the music shifted to upbeat dance tracks, signaling the transition to the more casual celebration phase of the evening. "Let's enjoy the rest of the night," Diana suggested, clearly ready to move past the potential tension and back to her role as the gracious host. "I've arranged for your favorite desserts to be served soon." As Diana moved away to speak with the event coordinator, Min approached, her expression concerned. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. "That video was interesting. It didn't really capture who you are now or what you've accomplished recently." "It captured Diana's perception," I replied, maintaining my composure. "And tonight isn't the time to correct that perception publicly. There will be better opportunities for honest conversation." Min studied my face, clearly trying to gauge whether my calm acceptance was genuine or a facade covering deeper hurt. "You're handling this with incredible grace," she finally said. "I'm not sure I could do the same in your position." Her observation made me pause and reflect on my own emotional journey throughout the evening. The hurt and anger I had initially felt upon discovering Diana's secret party had evolved into something more complex, a mixture of sadness for the dynamics that drove her behavior, compassion for the insecurity that seemed to underlie her need to diminish my achievements, and determination to establish a more authentic relationship moving forward. As the celebration continued around me, I found myself at a crossroads in my relationship with my sister. The path forward wasn't about winning a competition she had invented, it was about changing the nature of our interaction altogether. And the first step would be an honest conversation. Not tonight in the midst of this elaborate event, but soon, in a setting where truth could be spoken without the complications of an audience. The decision brought a sense of clarity and purpose that allowed me to genuinely enjoy the remainder of the evening, connecting with friends and family members who had come to celebrate with me, regardless of Diana's underlying motivations in gathering them together. The celebration continued into the night, transforming gradually from the structured event Diana had meticulously planned into something more organic and joyful. The dance floor filled with friends and family members enjoying the music, conversation. Groups formed and reformed throughout the space, and the initially tense atmosphere had largely dissipated. I moved through it all with a newfound sense of purpose, genuinely connecting with people I cared about while maintaining a gracious demeanor that revealed nothing of the complex emotions beneath. Diana remained in her element, circulating among guests to ensure everyone was enjoying themselves, accepting compliments for her exceptional planning, and continuing to position herself as the generous sister who had created this magical evening. The occasional glances she cast in my direction suggested she was monitoring my behavior, perhaps concerned I might still disrupt her carefully constructed narrative. As midnight approached, Diana gathered everyone for the traditional birthday cake presentation, another elaborately planned moment featuring a custom-designed confection from an exclusive bakery. The cake itself was a work of art, incorporating elements representing different aspects of my life in its intricate decorations. As guests sang "Happy Birthday," and I prepared to blow out the candles, Diana positioned herself beside me, arm around my shoulders in a gesture that appeared affectionate, while ensuring she remained prominently in every photograph. "Make a wish," she encouraged as the song concluded, her voice carrying just enough volume to be heard by those nearby. "Maybe for that big career break you've been hoping for." The comment was delivered with apparent supportiveness, but its underlying message was clear, reinforcing the narrative that my career remained in a developmental stage rather than acknowledging any significant achievement. It was a subtle reminder of the hierarchy Diana had constructed, inserted into what should have been a purely celebratory moment. I paused, looking at the flickering candles and the expectant faces surrounding me. The temptation to correct Diana's framing was strong, to announce my new position at Vertex Global and the successful acquisition that had preceded it. But that revelation deserved a more thoughtful approach than a reactive announcement driven by momentary frustration. Instead, I smiled, closed my eyes briefly, and blew out the candles to enthusiastic applause. Whatever Diana believed about my wishes, I knew that the most significant change I hoped for wasn't professional but relational. A transformation in how my sister and I interacted, a relationship built on mutual respect rather than competition and comparison. As the cake was being served, Marcus Chen, my father, approached with 2 glasses of champagne, offering one to me with a warm smile. "Happy birthday, daughter," he said simply, his quiet dignity a familiar comfort. Unlike my mother, whose relationship with me had been complicated by her traditional expectations, my father had always shown a steadier acceptance of my choices, even when they diverged from the path he might have preferred. "Thank you for being here, Dad," I replied, genuinely appreciative of his presence. "It means a lot to me." He nodded, taking a small sip of his champagne before speaking again. "Your sister put great effort into this celebration," he observed, his tone neutral, but his eyes watching me carefully. "Though the way it happened is unusual." The comment confirmed that my father had registered the strange dynamics of the evening, that this elaborate party supposedly in my honor had been planned without my knowledge or involvement. His understated acknowledgement was characteristic of his approach to family tensions, not ignoring them, but not inflaming them unnecessarily either. "Diana has always had her own way of doing things," I responded, matching his diplomatic tone. "The important thing is that so many people I care about are here tonight." My father studied me thoughtfully, the slight crease between his eyebrows suggesting he was considering saying more. Finally, he spoke again, his voice lowered to ensure our conversation remained private. "Success takes many forms, Olivia. Your path has been different from your sister's, but no less worthy of respect. I hope you know that I've always seen your value, even when others in our family found it harder to understand your choices." The words touched me deeply. My father had rarely been so direct in expressing his support for my unconventional career decisions. His validation felt particularly meaningful amid Diana's carefully orchestrated narrative about our relative achievements. "That means more than you know, Dad," I replied, emotion making my voice slightly unsteady. "Thank you for seeing me as I am." He nodded once, a gesture that conveyed both acknowledgement and conclusion. "Enjoy your celebration," he said, gently touching my shoulder before moving away to join a conversation with extended family members. The brief exchange with my father had centered me, providing an emotional anchor amid the complex currents of the evening. His quiet affirmation reminded me that authentic recognition from those who truly saw me was far more valuable than any public narrative Diana might construct about our respective successes. As the night progressed toward its conclusion, guests began departing in small groups, each stopping to wish me happy birthday one final time. Diana orchestrated these farewells with practiced efficiency, ensuring that each person left with a small gift bag. Another thoughtful touch that demonstrated the care she had invested in planning the event. Around 1 in the morning, only a small group of close friends and immediate family remained. The event staff had begun the subtle process of clearing and cleaning that signaled the approaching end of the celebration. Diana, showing minimal signs of fatigue despite having managed the event throughout the evening, gathered this final group for what she described as one last special moment. "Before we all depart," she announced, her voice carrying easily across the now quieter space, "I have a final surprise for the birthday girl." From her clutch, she withdrew a small box wrapped in elegant silver paper. "Olivia, this is something I've been saving for exactly the right moment." All eyes turned to me as Diana presented the box with a flourish that ensured everyone noticed her generosity. The staging was perfect. The thoughtful sister presenting a meaningful gift at the conclusion of the elaborate celebration she had created. Whatever the box contained, the presentation itself was part of Diana's carefully constructed narrative. I accepted the package with appropriate gratitude, aware of the expectant gazes focused on this final performance of our sisterly relationship. The box was small but substantial, suggesting jewelry or perhaps a luxury accessory. The wrapping paper came away to reveal a velvet case that confirmed my assumption. This was indeed jewelry, and likely expensive. Inside the case was a pendant, necklace, a delicate silver chain supporting a small but exquisite diamond pendant in the shape of a compass rose. It was undeniably beautiful, the kind of piece that combined elegance with symbolic meaning. "The compass represents your journey," Diana explained, her voice carrying the practiced sincerity of a prepared speech. "You've always chosen your own direction, even when it wasn't the conventional path. This is to remind you that wherever your journey leads, you'll always find your way." The gift was thoughtfully chosen, the symbolism meaningful, and Diana's explanation appeared genuinely affectionate. Yet I couldn't help noticing how the message subtly reinforced her narrative, positioning me as someone still finding my way, still on a journey toward the kind of established success she had already achieved. Even in this final gesture of generosity, Diana was maintaining the hierarchy she had constructed between us. "It's beautiful," I said sincerely, because despite the complex subtext, the necklace itself was genuinely lovely. "Thank you, Diana." She moved forward to help me put it on, positioning herself behind me to fasten the clasp. Another moment carefully staged for the remaining audience to witness her sisterly devotion. As she adjusted the pendant to hang perfectly centered, she whispered words meant only for me. "I hope you understand how much work went into tonight. I wanted everything to be perfect for you." The comment revealed Diana's continued assumption that my primary response to the evening should be gratitude for her efforts, rather than confusion or hurt about being excluded from my own celebration. It confirmed that she genuinely didn't see the problematic nature of her actions. In her mind, she had created something wonderful on my behalf, and my appropriate response was appreciation. "It was certainly memorable," I replied quietly, a response that was truthful without being confrontational. Diana seemed satisfied with this acknowledgement, moving back to address the remaining guests. "Thank you all for staying to the very end of our celebration. I think we can all agree it's been a night to remember." The final farewells were exchanged, the last gift bags distributed, and eventually only Diana and I remained with the event staff who were completing their cleanup. The magical environment she had created was being systematically dismantled. Flowers removed, lighting disassembled, furniture rearranged. It was an apt metaphor for what needed to happen in our relationship. The careful facades coming down, to reveal whatever authentic connection might be possible beneath. "Well," Diana said, surveying the now transformed space with satisfaction, "I think we can call that a successful evening. Everyone had a wonderful time, and you seemed to enjoy yourself despite the unexpected timing of your arrival." She delivered this assessment with the confident tone of someone accustomed to evaluating events against her own standards of success. The moment had arrived for a more direct conversation, but the setting, with staff still present, and both of us fatigued from the long evening, wasn't ideal for the kind of honest exchange our relationship needed. This would require a more private environment and clearer minds. "The party was impressive," I acknowledged, deliberately choosing a word that recognized her effort without suggesting I approved of how the event had come about. "But I think we should talk about how it happened. Just not tonight. Maybe coffee tomorrow?" Diana's expression flickered briefly with something that might have been concern before settling back into confident composure. "Of course," she agreed, with practiced ease. Though I'm not sure there's much to discuss. You arrived earlier than expected, but everything worked out beautifully in the end. Her framing was consistent with her previous attempts to convert her deception into a simple misunderstanding about timing. I chose not to challenge this narrative directly. Not yet. Not here. Let's talk tomorrow, I repeated simply. I'll text you in the morning to arrange a time. Diana agreed with apparent casualness that didn't quite mask her wariness. We parted with the kind of polite embrace that maintained appearances without conveying genuine closeness. As my rideshare pulled away from the venue, I felt the emotional weight of the evening finally settling on me. The mixture of hurt, determination, clarity, and hope that would shape whatever came next in our relationship. The next morning dawned clear and crisp, a perfect autumn Sunday that seemed to mirror my own sense of emotional clarity. The previous night's events had crystallized my understanding of the dynamics that had shaped my relationship with Diana for years, and I was determined that our conversation today would establish a new foundation, one built on honesty and mutual respect rather than competition and false narratives. I texted Diana suggesting we meet at Riverview Cafe, a quiet spot along the waterfront that offered private tables and a peaceful atmosphere conducive to serious conversation. She responded promptly, agreeing to meet at 11. Her message included a cheerful, "Looking forward to hearing more about how much you enjoyed the party." That suggested she was still operating under the assumption that our conversation would focus on my gratitude rather than addressing the underlying issues. I arrived early, selecting a table in a secluded corner that would allow for private conversation without interruption. The cafe was just beginning to fill with the post-church brunch crowd, creating enough ambient noise to ensure our discussion wouldn't be overheard while remaining quiet enough for comfortable conversation. Diana arrived precisely at 11, dressed in casual elegance that maintained her carefully curated image even for a simple coffee meeting. She spotted me and approached with the confident stride that had always characterized her physical presence, sliding into the seat across from me with a smile that appeared genuine but guarded. "You're looking remarkably fresh for someone who was celebrating until 1 in the morning, she observed, her tone light but assessing. "The party must have energized rather than exhausted you." "It was certainly an experience that gave me a lot to think about," I replied, meeting her gaze directly. "Which is actually what I wanted to discuss this morning." Diana's expression shifted subtly, her social smile remaining in place while her eyes became more watchful. "Of course," she said with practiced casualness, "though I'm not sure what there is to analyze. The party was a success by any standard. Everyone had a wonderful time. The venue was perfect, and you seemed to enjoy yourself once you got past the initial surprise." The framing was consistent with her previous attempts to normalize what had happened, positioning the surprise as a minor detail rather than a fundamental issue. It was time to address this directly. "Diana," I began, my voice calm but firm, "you planned an elaborate birthday celebration for me that you never intended me to attend. You created a fiction about having dinner with me while orchestrating an event where my absence would allow you to be the center of attention while appearing extraordinarily generous. I need to understand why." The directness of my statement momentarily disrupted Diana's composed facade. Her eyes widened slightly, and her hand paused in the act of reaching for her coffee cup. For a brief moment, I glimpsed something beneath. Her social performance, uncertainty perhaps, or the recognition that her actions couldn't be easily explained away. She recovered quickly, her expression settling into something more serious, as she apparently decided to engage with the reality of the situation, rather than continuing to pretend it had been a simple misunderstanding. "That's not how I would characterize what happened," she said carefully. "I wanted to create something special for you, something beyond what you would have expected or planned for yourself. The dinner was meant to be a prelude to bringing you to the main celebration, later in the evening." "Diana," I responded gently but firmly, You made detailed dinner reservations at Petite Maison for 8 p.m., the exact time the party was scheduled to begin. You told people I wouldn't be attending until much later, if at all. The timeline display and video tribute you created portrayed a version of my life and career that minimized my actual achievements. This wasn't about creating something special for me. It was about creating a narrative that positioned you as the successful, generous sister and me as someone who needed your support and validation. Diana's composure faltered again, her carefully maintained expression showing cracks that revealed genuine emotion beneath, a mixture of defensiveness and something that might have been shame or embarrassment at having her actions so clearly named. "That's unfair," she protested, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. "I invested weeks of planning and considerable expense to celebrate your birthday. The fact that you discovered it earlier than intended doesn't negate the thought and care that went into creating that evening." "I'm not questioning the effort you invested," I clarified. "I'm questioning why you created an elaborate celebration, supposedly in my honor, that excluded me from both the planning and the actual event. I'm asking why you felt the need to present a carefully edited version of my career that omitted my most significant achievements." Diana's eyes flickered away from mine, focusing instead on her coffee cup as she formulated her response. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter, less assured than her usual public persona. "I wanted to do something meaningful," she said. "Something that would show the family and our social circle how much I value our relationship. Is it so wrong to want to create a beautiful event to honor my sister's birthday?" "The intent isn't wrong," I acknowledged. "But the execution revealed something important about how you see me and how you've positioned yourself in relation to me. For years, you've cultivated a narrative where your traditional career path represents greater success than my entrepreneurial choices. Last night's event was an extension of that narrative. You as the accomplished sister generously celebrating the less conventional one." Diana's expression tightened, defensive anger briefly visible before she controlled it. "That's your interpretation," she countered. "I've always supported your choices, even when they seemed risky or unconventional. If I've emphasized my own achievements, it's because I've worked incredibly hard to build my career, and I'm proud of what I've accomplished." "You should be proud," I agreed sincerely. "You've achieved exactly what you set out to do, and that deserves recognition and respect. But supporting someone's choices means acknowledging their actual achievements, not creating a narrative that diminishes them to make your own seem more impressive by comparison." A flash of genuine emotion crossed Diana's face, frustration, mixed with something that might have been hurt. "Is that really how you see our relationship? That I've been deliberately undermining you all these years?" The question seemed to contain real pain, suggesting that Diana's perspective on our dynamics was genuinely different from my own, that she might not have been fully conscious of the competitive framework she had constructed. "I don't think it's been deliberate in the way you're suggesting," I replied thoughtfully. "But I do think you've needed to position yourself as the more successful sister to validate your own choices. And that need has shaped how you've represented me to others, and perhaps even how you've seen me yourself." Diana was silent for a long moment, her gaze focused on the waterfront visible through the cafe window. When she finally responded, her voice had lost its defensive edge, revealing something more vulnerable beneath. "Do you know how hard it's been?" she asked quietly. "Living up to expectations, following the path everyone approved of, doing everything exactly right. You chose freedom, pursuing what interested you regardless of how stable or prestigious it seemed. I chose security and approval, and yes, I needed that choice to be validated as the right one." The admission was more honest than anything Diana had shared with me in years. It offered a glimpse of the insecurity beneath her confident exterior, the fear that her conventional choices might be less fulfilling than my more independent path. The need to believe that the security she had prioritized was worth the creative freedom she had sacrificed. "Both choices are valid," I said gently. Your path has brought you stability, recognition, and the satisfaction of meeting goals you set for yourself. Mine has involved more uncertainty, but has led to innovations I'm genuinely proud of. Neither approach is inherently better or more successful than the other. Diana's expression revealed conflicting emotions, recognition of the truth in my words competing with the deeply ingrained need to maintain the hierarchy she had constructed. "It's easy to say that now," she responded, a hint of her earlier defensiveness returning. "But you haven't exactly been transparent about your own achievements either. If things have been going so well professionally, why haven't you shared that with the family?" The question was fair. My privacy about my recent success had contributed to Diana's ability to maintain her narrative about our relative achievements. It was time for complete honesty on both sides. "You're right," I acknowledged. "I've been private about my professional development, partly because I wanted to establish my success on my own terms rather than constantly comparing it to yours. But that ends today. I want us to move forward with genuine understanding of each other's lives and achievements." Diana's expression shifted, curiosity replacing defensiveness as she registered the deliberate significance in my tone. "What do you mean, that ends today? Has something happened that you haven't shared with the family?" I reached for my bag, removing the leather portfolio containing the Vertex Global documents I had considered revealing the previous night. This wasn't about creating a dramatic moment or embarrassing Diana. It was about establishing an honest foundation for whatever our relationship might become. 6 months ago, I completed development of a proprietary algorithm that transforms how companies identify and engage potential customers, I explained, my voice steady and factual rather than triumphant. The technology reduces acquisition costs by over 40% while significantly increasing conversion rates. 3 weeks ago, Vertex Global acquired my innovation and the associated intellectual property. I slid the documents across the table, the acquisition agreement, the press release scheduled for official announcement next week, and most significantly, the offer letter detailing my new position as Director of Innovation Strategy, complete with compensation package and equity options. Diana's expression transformed as she processed the documents, moving from polite interest to genuine surprise to something more complex, a mixture of conflicting emotions I couldn't fully interpret. Her hands were steady as she reviewed the materials, her professional training apparently helping her maintain composure despite the evident shock value of what she was reading. When she finally looked up, her face had settled into a carefully neutral expression that couldn't quite mask the turmoil beneath. "This is substantial," she said, her understated response revealing more about her emotional state than a more dramatic reaction would have. "Congratulations, Olivia. This represents significant professional achievement." The formal phrasing was telling. Diana was retreating into professional language to process information that fundamentally challenged her understanding of our respective positions. The acquisition deal and executive position clearly exceeded what she had believed possible along my unconventional career path. "Thank you," I replied simply. "I'm sharing this not to compete with your achievements, but to establish honesty between us. For years, you've positioned yourself as the successful sister and me as the one still finding my way. That narrative shaped how you presented me to others and how you justified excluding me from my own birthday celebration. It's time for both of us to see each other as we actually are, not as characters in the story you've been telling." Diana was silent for a long moment, her fingers resting lightly on the documents as if maintaining physical contact with the evidence that had disrupted her worldview. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a thoughtfulness I rarely heard from her. "I've been so focused on external validations of success," she said quietly. "The right firm, the right title, the right social circle. I needed those markers to prove I'd made the correct choices." She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "And I needed to believe that choosing differently meant achieving less. The admission was startlingly honest, an acknowledgement of the insecurity that had driven her competitive behavior and need to diminish my accomplishments. It represented a level of self-awareness I hadn't expected and suggested the possibility of meaningful change in our relationship. "We've both been successful in different ways," I observed, neither minimizing my achievements nor elevating them above hers. "Your path has brought you the stability and recognition you valued, while mine has led to innovation and creative fulfillment. Neither approach is inherently better than the other." Diana nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful as she processed this perspective. "The party," she said after a moment, returning to the event that had precipitated our conversation. "I realize now how it must have looked to you, planning this elaborate celebration of your birthday that you weren't supposed to attend." "I'd like to understand what you were thinking," I replied, my tone genuinely curious rather than accusatory. "What was the plan exactly? How was the evening supposed to unfold if I hadn't discovered it?" Diana sighed, a small gesture that suggested the weight of confronting her own motivations. "I was going to have dinner with you at Petite Maison, a nice but relatively simple celebration. Then I'd suggest we get a drink somewhere else, and I'd spontaneously remember that some friends were gathering at Skyline Terrace. We'd stop by briefly, and you'd be surprised by the full party already in progress." With all the attention focused on you as the amazing sister who had created this elaborate surprise, I observed, not unkindly, but honestly naming the dynamic. "Yes," Diana admitted, her voice quieter. "I would be the one who had orchestrated this magical moment, who had brought together all these people from different chapters of your life, who had created this perfect celebration that you never could have planned for yourself." The acknowledgement was striking in its candor. Diana was directly confronting the self-serving nature of her plan, the way it had been designed to position her as the generous, successful sister creating something wonderful for the less accomplished one. "And the career timeline display?" I asked, referring to the carefully edited representation of my professional journey that had minimized my achievements. "The video tribute that omitted any mention of my recent success?" Diana's expression revealed genuine discomfort as she confronted these more difficult aspects of her behavior. "I wanted to present a narrative that made sense to me," she admitted. "One where my traditional path represented the greater achievement, while your choices were interesting, but less substantial. I needed that to be true." The honesty was painful but necessary, a clear-eyed acknowledgement of how Diana's insecurity had driven her to construct a narrative that diminished my accomplishments to validate her own choices. It represented a level of self-awareness that created possibility for genuine change. "I understand needing validation for your choices," I said gently. "But that validation doesn't have to come at the expense of acknowledging my achievements. We can both be successful in different ways without diminishing each other." Diana nodded slowly, her expression suggesting she was processing this perspective. "I've been competing with you for so long," she said thoughtfully, "always needing to be seen as the more successful sister, the one who made the right choices. I'm not sure I know how to relate to you without that framework." The observation was surprisingly insightful. Diana was recognizing that her competitive approach had become so ingrained that establishing a healthier dynamic would require conscious effort and fundamental change. It wasn't just about acknowledging my success. It was about reimagining our entire relationship. "We could start by actually seeing each other," I suggested. "Not as characters in the story you've been telling, but as we really are, with our genuine strengths, challenges, and achievements. No more carefully edited versions of our lives designed to maintain a hierarchy between us." Diana was quiet, for a moment, considering this proposal. "That would mean letting go of the narrative I've constructed," she acknowledged. "The one where my choices are validated as objectively better than yours. I'm not sure how to do that." "It starts with honesty," I replied. Like what we're doing right now, acknowledging the dynamics that have shaped our relationship and choosing to create something healthier. And it continues with genuine interest in each other's actual lives and achievements, not the versions we've presented to maintain certain appearances. Diana's fingers traced the edge of the Vertex Global documents, a physical reminder of the reality that had disrupted her understanding of our relative positions. Your success challenges everything I've told myself about our different paths, she admitted. I've justified my competitiveness by believing I was objectively more successful, that my choices had led to greater achievement. Now I have to confront the possibility that both approaches can lead to significant accomplishment. The acknowledgement represented genuine progress. Diana was actively questioning the framework that had shaped her behavior for years. But I also recognized that meaningful change wouldn't happen in a single conversation, no matter how honest. This was the beginning of a process that would require ongoing effort from both of us. What happens now? Diana asked, her question encompassing both our immediate interaction and the broader future of our relationship. Where do we go from here? We start fresh, I suggested, with mutual respect for each other's choices and achievements, with genuine interest in each other's lives rather than competitive comparison, with honesty about our insecurities instead of projecting them onto each other. Diana nodded slowly, her expression suggesting she was genuinely considering this possibility, rather than simply agreeing to move past an uncomfortable confrontation. I'd like that, she said quietly, though I'm not sure I know exactly how to do it. We'll figure it out together, I replied, offering the kind of genuine partnership that had been missing from our relationship for years. Starting with honesty about where we are now and what we hope to create moving forward. Our conversation continued for another hour, moving gradually from the difficult truths that had initiated our discussion toward tentative exploration of what a healthier relationship might look like. Diana shared aspects of her professional life she had never discussed before, the insecurities she felt even within her successful career, the pressure of maintaining perfect appearances, the loneliness that sometimes accompanied her carefully constructed image of success. I reciprocated with honest reflections on my own journey, the doubts that had accompanied my less conventional choices, the financial uncertainties I had navigated before the acquisition, the satisfaction I found in creative problem-solving that compensated for the lack of traditional prestige. This exchange represented something new between us, vulnerable honesty replacing competitive positioning, genuine interest supplanting performative support. As our coffee meeting concluded, Diana surprised me with a gesture that suggested she was genuinely committed to establishing a new dynamic between us. I've been thinking about what you said regarding the party, she said thoughtfully, about how it became more about showcasing my generosity than actually celebrating you. I'd like to do something different, something that's truly about honoring your birthday and recent success, with you fully included in both the planning and the celebration. The offer seemed sincere, reflecting Diana's recognition of how her previous approach had prioritized her need for validation over genuinely celebrating me. It represented a small but significant step toward the healthier relationship we had discussed. I'd like that, I responded, appreciating the gesture without expecting immediate transformation of our complex dynamics. Something simple where we can enjoy each other's company without performing for an audience. Diana nodded, her expression suggesting she understood exactly what I meant about the performative nature of her previous approach to our relationship. I'll reach out later this week to discuss possibilities, she promised as we prepared to depart. Something that celebrates you as you actually are, not as I've needed you to be. The phrase was striking in its self-awareness. Diana was explicitly acknowledging how her own needs had shaped her perception and presentation of me. It suggested a level of insight that created genuine possibility for change. 3 weeks later, Diana's promised celebration materialized in a form that demonstrated her commitment to establishing a new dynamic between us. rather than another, elaborate event designed to showcase her generosity. She arranged a small gathering at a cozy wine bar I had always loved, but she had previously dismissed as charmingly rustic. Her diplomatic phrase for establishments she considered insufficiently prestigious. The guest list was limited to people who knew and valued me for who I actually was, rather than those who would be impressed by Diana's planning. Just 8 close friends and our parents, in a private room with no performative speeches or carefully staged moments. The only planned element was a simple toast Diana offered, acknowledging both my birthday and my recent professional achievement with genuine pride, untainted by competitive comparison. "To Olivia," she said, raising her glass as our small group gathered around the table. "My brilliant sister whose creativity and determination have led to well-deserved success. I'm genuinely proud of who you are and what you've accomplished." The words were simple, but represented profound change. Diana publicly acknowledging my achievement without qualifying it or positioning it as secondary to her own success. The genuine warmth in her voice suggested this wasn't merely performative. She was actively working to see me as I actually was, rather than as a character in the competitive narrative she had constructed. Our mother, who had always struggled to understand my less conventional choices, seemed momentarily startled by Diana's unqualified praise. I caught her glancing between us with an expression that suggested she was registering the shift in our dynamic and trying to adjust her own understanding accordingly. "Both my daughters have found success in their own ways," she observed later in the evening, her comment revealing her attempt to accommodate this new framework where Diana wasn't, positioned as the more accomplished sister. Different paths, but equally impressive destinations. The observation, while somewhat stilted, represented its own kind of progress. Our mother attempting to acknowledge my achievements without implicitly ranking them below Diana's more traditional success. Like Diana, she was working to adjust perspectives that had been reinforced over many years, and that process would naturally involve some awkwardness and uncertainty. As the evening progressed, I observed Diana making conscious efforts to engage differently with me, asking thoughtful questions about my work without the subtle condescension that had previously characterized her interest, sharing genuine challenges from her own career without the careful curation that had maintained her image of perfect success, creating space for authentic connection rather than competitive comparison. These changes weren't performative gestures designed to move past our confrontation. They represented genuine effort to establish the healthier dynamic we had discussed. Diana was actively working to see me as I actually was, and to allow herself to be seen more authentically as well. The result was the most genuine interaction we had experienced in years. 6 months later, the transformation in our relationship continued to evolve through conscious effort on both sides. Diana had been true to her commitment to establish a different dynamic between us, consistently demonstrating genuine interest in my actual achievements rather than the diminished version she had previously maintained. When Vertex Global publicly announced a major expansion of my innovation division, she was the first to call with sincere congratulations untainted by competitive comparison. For my part, I had worked to acknowledge Diana's achievements with genuine appreciation rather than defensive comparison. When she secured a significant promotion at her firm, I organized a small celebration that honored her success without qualifying it in relation to my own. These mutual recognitions helped establish a pattern of support that gradually replaced the competitive framework that had previously defined our relationship. The most significant evidence of change came during a family dinner where conversation turned to career advice for our younger cousin who was approaching graduation. In the past, Diana would have positioned her traditional path as the obvious choice for security and success, while dismissing my entrepreneurial approach as inherently riskier and less advisable. Instead, she surprised me by offering a balanced perspective that acknowledged the potential value of both approaches. "There are different ways to build a successful career," she told our cousin with genuine thoughtfulness. "The traditional path I took offers certain types of security and clear benchmarks for advancement. But Olivia's more entrepreneurial approach created opportunities for innovation that wouldn't have been possible within established structures. The right choice depends on your personal strengths and what kind of fulfillment you're seeking. The assessment was remarkably balanced. Diana was explicitly acknowledging that my different choices had created unique opportunities rather than simply representing a less successful version of her own path. It reflected genuine evolution in her thinking, a willingness to see value in approaches that diverged from her own carefully planned trajectory. Our mother, witnessing this exchange, seemed momentarily confused by Diana's balanced perspective. "But surely the traditional path is safer," she suggested, revealing her own continued preference for established routes to success. Less uncertainty, more predictable outcomes. Safer in some ways, Diana acknowledged, but with its own limitations. Following established paths means accepting the constraints those paths impose. Olivia's approach involved more uncertainty, but created possibility for innovation that wouldn't have fit within traditional structures. She glanced at me with genuine respect rather than the condescending acknowledgement that would have characterized similar discussions in the past. Different choices, different risks and rewards, neither inherently better than the other. This balanced assessment from Diana, publicly acknowledging the value in my different approach without qualifying it as less successful than her own, represented the most significant evidence of how our relationship had evolved. She was no longer positioning herself as the successful sister graciously acknowledging her less accomplished sibling. She was recognizing genuine achievement along a different path, validating choices that diverged from her own. The transformation wasn't complete or perfect. Both Diana and I sometimes slipped into old patterns during moments of insecurity or stress. But we had established a foundation of honesty that allowed us to recognize and address these regressions, rather than allowing them to reinforce harmful dynamics. We were actively creating a new relationship based on mutual respect and genuine interest rather than competitive comparison. The birthday party that Diana had planned without inviting me, the event that had precipitated our confrontation and subsequent transformation, now seemed like a symbol of the flawed dynamic we had moved beyond. What had initially felt like painful betrayal had ultimately created opportunity for honest conversation and meaningful change. By crashing my own celebration, I had inadvertently initiated a process that led to the most authentic relationship my sister and I had experienced in years. The journey wasn't over. Transforming deeply ingrained patterns required ongoing awareness and consistent effort from both of us. But we had created a new foundation based on seeing each other as we actually were, rather than as characters in a competitive narrative. That foundation supported genuine connection that enriched both our lives in ways the previous dynamic never could have allowed. As I reflected on this evolution during a quiet moment at my office, now the headquarters of Vertex Global's Innovation Strategy Division, I realized that crashing my own birthday party had ultimately given me a gift far more valuable than any celebration: the opportunity to build an authentic relationship with my sister based on mutual respect rather than manufactured hierarchy. That transformation represented the most meaningful milestone of my 30th year. Not the professional success I had achieved, but the personal growth that allowed Diana and me to finally see and appreciate each other as we truly were. The transformation in my relationship with Diana continued to evolve in unexpected ways over the following months. What had begun as a painful confrontation about a birthday party had catalyzed genuine change that extended beyond our immediate interactions, to influence broader family dynamics and our individual approaches to success and validation. One Tuesday afternoon, I received a text from Diana that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. "Need advice on something outside my expertise. Do you have time for coffee this week?" The message was striking not just for its direct acknowledgement that she valued my perspective, but for its implicit recognition that there were areas where my different experiences might provide insights her traditional path hadn't offered. We met at a small cafe near my office, where Diana arrived with uncharacteristic nervousness evident in her body language. After brief pleasantries, she explained the situation that had prompted her unusual request. The firm is establishing a new division focused on technology startups and emerging digital companies, she said, her fingers fidgeting slightly with her coffee cup. They've asked me to lead the legal team that will support these clients. It's a significant opportunity, partner track if I succeed, considerable visibility within the firm. The opportunity clearly aligned with Diana's career ambitions, but her uncharacteristic uncertainty suggested complications beyond the surface details. That sounds like exactly the kind of advancement you've been working toward, I observed. What's giving you pause? Diana sighed, revealing vulnerability she would never have shown me before our relationship shifted. The truth is, I don't understand these clients or their business models the way I understand traditional corporate entities. These technology founders speak a different language, prioritize different values, measure success by metrics I'm not familiar with. She met my eyes directly. I realize this is precisely the world you've been navigating successfully for years. You understand their mindset and priorities in ways I simply don't. The acknowledgement was remarkable, Diana explicitly recognizing my expertise in an area where she felt uncertain, valuing my different experience rather than dismissing it as less substantial than her own. This represented profound evolution. From the hierarchy she had previously constructed where her traditional path was inherently superior to my more unconventional choices. I can help with that, I offered, genuinely pleased by her willingness to seek my guidance. Technology startups operate with different priorities and timelines than established companies. They value adaptability over predictability, growth, potential over current profitability, disruptive innovation over incremental improvement. Their legal needs reflect these different priorities. Over the next hour, I shared insights from my years working with emerging technology companies, how they evaluated potential partnerships, what they prioritized in legal arrangements, the language and approaches that resonated with their entrepreneurial mindset. Diana listened with focused attention, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions that reflected genuine interest in understanding this different perspective rather than fitting it into her existing framework. This is incredibly helpful, she acknowledged as our conversation concluded. You've given me a conceptual framework that makes their priorities comprehensible rather than simply different from what I'm accustomed to. She hesitated briefly before adding, I've been thinking about how I've approached my career, always following established paths, measuring success by conventional metrics. Your different choices have created knowledge and perspective I simply don't have, despite all my careful planning and traditional achievements. The observation reflected significant evolution in Diana's thinking. She was explicitly acknowledging value in approaches that diverged from her carefully constructed path, recognizing that different choices created different forms of expertise, rather than simply representing less successful versions of her own trajectory. Different experiences create different insights, I agreed. My choices weren't better or worse than yours, just different, with their own advantages and limitations. The ideal approach probably incorporates elements of both. Diana nodded, thoughtfully. I'm beginning to understand that, she said, her tone suggesting genuine reflection rather than polite agreement. For so long, I needed to believe there was a single correct path to success, the one I had chosen. Acknowledging value in different approaches felt like questioning my own choices. But that perspective limited me in ways I'm only now recognizing. This insight represented remarkable growth. Diana was articulating how her need for validation had constrained her thinking and prevented her from recognizing value in different approaches. The conversation concluded with plans to meet again the following week to continue discussing strategy for her new professional challenge, establishing a collaborative dynamic that would have been impossible under our previous competitive framework. The evolution in our relationship extended beyond these professional interactions to influence broader family dynamics that had been shaped by the hierarchy Diana had constructed. During a family dinner celebrating our father's birthday, an exchange occurred that highlighted this transformation in subtle but significant ways. Our uncle, who had always reinforced Diana's narrative about our relative achievements, made a characteristic comment comparing our different career paths. "Diana has always chosen the sensible route," he observed with apparent approval. "Prestigious firm, established career trajectory, clear benchmarks for success. Olivia's approach has been more creative." The pause before creative carried the familiar implication that my choices represented a less successful version of Diana's more prudent decisions. In the past, Diana would have accepted this framing with gracious acknowledgement, perhaps adding subtle reinforcement to the hierarchy our uncle was constructing. Instead, she surprised everyone at the table with her response. "Actually, our different approaches have created complementary forms of expertise," she corrected gently but firmly. "My traditional path provided certain advantages, but Olivia's entrepreneurial choices created opportunities for innovation that wouldn't have been possible within established structures." Her recent success with Vertex Global demonstrates the value in pursuing approaches that diverge from conventional wisdom. The intervention was remarkable. Diana was publicly challenging the comparative framework our family had applied to our choices for years, establishing a new narrative based on different but equally valid approaches rather than hierarchical. Evaluation. Our uncle appeared momentarily confused by this departure from the established pattern, while our mother watched with an expression that suggested she was still adjusting to this evolved perspective on our different paths. "Both approaches have merit," our father observed, supporting Diana's reframing with his characteristic thoughtfulness. "Different routes to meaningful achievement rather than a competition with winners and losers." This exchange represented significant shift in our family's collective understanding of success, moving from hierarchical comparison toward recognition of different but equally valid approaches. The change hadn't emerged spontaneously. It resulted from Diana's conscious decision to challenge the narrative she had previously reinforced, replacing competitive comparison with genuine appreciation for different choices. Our evolving relationship continued to develop through small but meaningful interactions that gradually established new patterns of mutual support and genuine interest. When Diana encountered challenges implementing her strategy for the technology startup division, she reached out without hesitation, valuing my perspective without the defensive qualification that would have characterized similar exchanges in the past. Similarly, when I faced difficult decisions about expanding my division at Vertex Global, I sought Diana's input on contractual and structural considerations, appreciating her expertise in areas where my experience was limited. These collaborative exchanges created a dynamic where our different knowledge complemented rather than competed, enriching both our professional lives through genuine partnership. The most profound evidence of transformation came unexpectedly, during preparations for Diana's wedding to James, her partner of 3 years. Wedding planning had always seemed like an arena perfectly designed to reinforce Diana's carefully constructed image, an opportunity to showcase perfect taste, substantial resources, and impressive social connections. When she asked me to meet for lunch to discuss wedding preparations, I anticipated a conversation focused on logistics and appearances, perhaps with Diana maintaining careful control over how the celebration would present her to the assembled guests. Instead, she surprised me with a request that revealed how fundamentally our relationship had evolved. "I'd like you to be my maid of honor," she said simply, the straightforward request lacking the elaborate staging that would have characterized similar moments in the past. Not because it's the expected choice, or because it creates the right appearance, but because our relationship has become something genuine and important to me, something real rather than performative. The distinction was meaningful. Diana was explicitly acknowledging how our previous interactions had been shaped by appearances and expectations rather than authentic connection. Her request represented desire for genuine relationship rather. than adherence to social convention or maintenance of carefully constructed image. "I'd be honored," I replied sincerely, recognizing the significance of this moment in our evolving relationship. "And I appreciate that this request comes from a place of authenticity rather than obligation." Diana nodded, her expression reflecting the same recognition. "A year ago, I would have asked you with elaborate staging designed to showcase my generosity and thoughtfulness," she acknowledged with remarkable self-awareness. "The request would have been about creating the right appearance rather than expressing genuine feeling. I'm trying to build something different now, in our relationship, and in my approach to validation and success more broadly. This conscious effort to replace performative gestures with authentic connection extended throughout the wedding planning process. Rather than using the celebration as another opportunity to showcase her perfect taste and impressive resources, Diana approached it with surprising emphasis on meaningful experience over perfect appearances. When selecting the venue, she chose a location that held personal significance rather than the prestigious setting that would have aligned with her previous priorities. For the guest list, she focused on people with whom she and James shared genuine connection rather than those whose presence would create the right impression. Throughout the process, she demonstrated awareness of how her previous approach had prioritized external validation over authentic experience. "I'm realizing how much of my life has been shaped by concern with appearances rather than genuine satisfaction," she confided during one wedding planning session. "I've made so many choices based on how they would be perceived rather than how they would feel to experience. This celebration is an opportunity to prioritize differently, to focus on meaning rather than impression." The insight reflected profound personal growth. Diana was actively examining how her need for external validation had influenced her choices and relationships, consciously developing different priorities that emphasized authentic experience over perfect appearances. This evolution extended beyond our specific relationship to shape her broader approach to success and fulfillment. The wedding itself embodied this transformed perspective, rather than the elaborately staged production that would have aligned with Diana's previous priorities. The celebration was characterized by genuine warmth and meaningful moments that prioritized connection over impression. Her vows to James emphasized partnership and growth rather than achievement and appearance, revealing evolution in her understanding of what constituted meaningful success. As maid of honor, I observed these changes with appreciation for the genuine transformation they represented. Diana wasn't simply adjusting her behavior to accommodate our confrontation about the birthday party. She was fundamentally reconsidering her approach to validation and fulfillment, questioning patterns that had shaped her choices for decades. During the reception, our mother approached me with an observation that highlighted how these changes had influenced broader family dynamics. "Your sister is different," she said, her tone suggesting she was still processing this evolution. "More genuine, less concerned with perfect appearances. Your relationship seems to have shifted as well, more supportive than competitive." "We've both grown," I acknowledged, recognizing that different choices can create different forms of success rather than requiring hierarchical comparison. My mother nodded thoughtfully. "I may have contributed to that competitive dynamic," she admitted with surprising self-awareness. "Always comparing your different choices, implicitly ranking one approach above the other. I'm beginning to understand. That was unfair to you both." The acknowledgement was remarkable coming from our mother, who had consistently reinforced the hierarchical evaluation of our different paths. It suggested that the transformation in my relationship with Diana was influencing broader family patterns, creating possibility for more authentic connections throughout our shared relationships. As the wedding celebration concluded, Diana and I shared a quiet moment amid the gradual departure of guests. "Thank you," she said simply, "not just for your role today, but for challenging the narrative I constructed about our relationship. That confrontation about the birthday party was painful, but necessary. It forced me to examine patterns I might never have questioned otherwise. The acknowledgement completed a circle that had begun with that painful discovery of a celebration, planned without my knowledge or participation. What had initially felt like betrayal had ultimately created opportunity for honest conversation and meaningful change, transforming not just our specific relationship, but our individual approaches to validation and success. We've both grown through that process, I observed, moving from competitive comparison toward genuine appreciation of our different strengths and choices. Diana nodded, her expression reflecting thoughtful recognition of how far we had traveled from the hierarchy she had previously constructed. I'm still working to prioritize authentic satisfaction over external validation, she acknowledged. Still catching myself making choices based on appearances rather than genuine fulfillment. But I'm becoming more aware of those patterns and more intentional about creating different ones. This ongoing awareness represented the most meaningful aspect of our transformed relationship. Not perfect resolution, but conscious evolution. Not elimination of ingrained patterns, but increased recognition when they emerged. Not completed journey, but committed process of growth and change. 1 year after the birthday party that had precipitated our confrontation and subsequent transformation, Diana suggested we meet for dinner at a small neighborhood restaurant she would previously have dismissed as insufficiently prestigious for significant conversations. The choice of venue itself reflected her evolving priorities, focusing on genuine experience rather than impressive appearance. I've been reflecting on everything that's changed since last year, she said as we settled. At a quiet corner table, how differently I understand success and validation, how much more authentic our relationship has become, how my awareness of these patterns has influenced other aspects of my life. The reflection wasn't self-congratulatory but thoughtfully evaluative. Diana assessing genuine change while acknowledging ongoing effort rather than claiming complete transformation. This balanced perspective represented significant growth from the carefully curated image she had previously maintained. The most meaningful change has been recognizing that different choices create different forms of success, rather than requiring hierarchical comparison, she continued. Understanding that your path isn't simply a less successful version of mine, but a different approach with its own unique value and achievements. This insight captured the essential transformation in our relationship, moving from competitive comparison toward genuine appreciation for different choices and experiences. We had replaced Diana's carefully constructed hierarchy with mutual respect that allowed authentic connection previously impossible under the comparative framework she had maintained. I'm still working to apply that understanding consistently, Diana acknowledged with characteristic honesty. Still finding myself measuring choices against external standards rather than internal satisfaction. But I'm becoming more aware of those patterns and more intentional about creating different ones. This ongoing awareness represented the most significant evidence of genuine change. Diana wasn't claiming perfect transformation, but demonstrating continued commitment to recognizing and addressing patterns that had previously constrained her understanding of success and fulfillment. As our dinner concluded, Diana offered a reflection that captured the meaningful growth our relationship had experienced. A year ago, I was planning a birthday celebration designed to showcase my generosity, while reinforcing a narrative about our relative achievements, she observed with remarkable self-awareness. Today we're sharing a meal focused on genuine connection rather than performative appearance. That evolution represents the most meaningful success I've experienced, more significant than any professional achievement or social recognition. This perspective revealed profound transformation in Diana's understanding of what constituted meaningful accomplishment, prioritizing authentic relationship over external validation, genuine connection over perfect appearance.
The journey wasn't complete or perfect, but the direction was clear, and the progress substantial. As I reflected on our evolution during my drive home that evening, I recognized that crashing my own birthday party had ultimately created opportunity for growth that extended far beyond that specific event. What had begun as painful confrontation about exclusion from a celebration had catalyzed transformation that influenced our individual approaches to success, our relationship with each other, and broader family dynamics that had reinforced harmful, comparative patterns. The birthday party Diana had planned without inviting me, the event that had precipitated our confrontation and subsequent transformation, now seemed less like betrayal and more like necessary disruption of patterns that had constrained both our relationship and our individual development. By crashing that carefully staged celebration, I had inadvertently initiated a process that led to more authentic connection and more balanced understanding of different forms of achievement. This transformation represented the most meaningful outcome of that painful discovery. Not perfect resolution, but ongoing evolution. Not elimination of ingrained patterns, but increased awareness when they emerged. Not completed journey, but committed process of growth and change. Together, Diana and I were creating relationship based on genuine appreciation rather than competitive comparison. Authentic connection rather than performative appearance. Mutual support rather than hierarchical evaluation. That evolution, still developing, still requiring conscious effort from both of us, represented more meaningful achievement than any professional success or social recognition either of us had experienced. It was foundation for genuine connection that enriched both our lives in ways the previous competitive dynamic never could have allowed. The unexpected gift that emerged from party I was never meant to attend.